I always thought my dad was an alcoholic. Turns out, he was just an incredibly kind man. I've decided to give up my parental rights to my 14-year-old daughter. A tenant took his own life after being told his lease wouldn't be renewed. My brother tried to pull a scheme behind his wife's back, and it blew up in his face. Get it off your chest. Episode 1. I always thought my dad was an alcoholic. Turns out, he was just an incredibly kind man. My dad passed away a few years ago. I think he was a wonderful father, although for a long time I believed he had a pretty selfish side to him. He didn't take care of himself at all, ate junk, smoked a lot, and loved to drink. For most of my life, it never caused any serious problems. Usually, it just came down to him getting hilariously drunk at weddings and dancing until 2 a.m. like some majestic walrus. All the aunties adored him. I wasn't having quite as much fun though, because dragging him home after those parties was always my job. Mom couldn't manage it on her own, and by that point, my sister was usually just as drunk as he was, sometimes more. But in everyday life, he actually didn't drink all that often. Dad was always a cheerful person who was just pleasant to be around. He was constantly coming up with fun stuff for me and my sister, always trying to make sure we had a good time. He's the reason my future wife felt like part of our family. Almost immediately, he started treating her like his own daughter and including her in all our family plans. When my kids grow up and start bringing home their partners, I really hope I can welcome them the way he once welcomed my wife. So yeah, Dad liked to drink, but mostly on holidays and in good company. There was, however, one period I remember very clearly. I was about 10 or 11 at the time, and that's when I felt like things were really getting out of control. Sometimes, Dad would get so hammered that he couldn't drive my best friend home after she came over to visit. As a result, she'd have to stay the night at our place, usually in my sister's room. As a kid, it didn't bother me too much. If anything, a sleepover with friends felt like an adventure. In the morning, we'd just walk to school together. Still, I felt a little ashamed and uncomfortable about my dad's behavior. And then, it all just faded away on its own. By the time I was old enough to talk to him openly about that kind of thing, the problem was already gone. And by then, that friend and I had pretty much stopped talking. After we went to different schools, our paths drifted apart. A few days ago, I ran into her, by chance, for the first time in years. We got to talking, and she asked how my parents were doing. I had to tell her that I'd lost them both in recent years. Her reaction surprised me. She took the news very hard, much harder than I expected. I asked why it hit her like that, and that's when she told me something I'd never heard before. It turns out my parents once literally saved her. During those very years when I was convinced my dad was drinking too much, her family was going through a brutal divorce. Her father walked out and basically left her mother with a child and no money. They were barely scraping by and at times could hardly even afford groceries. My parents wanted to help. My mom was friends with her mother and knew exactly how bad their situation was. But her mother flat out refused to accept any help, or, as she called it, handouts. So my parents came up with a rather unusual way to help without wounding her pride. Every time my friend came over to our place, and back then that happened pretty often, my dad would suddenly have a few too many and be unable to get behind the wheel. So he supposedly couldn't drive her home and she'd have to stay over, which meant a hot dinner in the evening, breakfast in the morning, and a packed lunch for school the next day. My mom played her part in the act too. She'd sigh theatrically, "Oh no, I made way too much food again." And then, when picking us up from school and dropping my friend off at home, she'd casually hand her a few containers of leftovers. This went on for just a few weeks until her mom got back on her feet. My friend herself only figured out what had really been happening years later when her mother told her the whole story. And I stayed completely in the dark this entire time. I sincerely believed my dad had simply developed a drinking problem back then. And here's the most incredible part. I might never have learned the truth. We have almost no relatives left. If I hadn't randomly run into that friend, no one would ever have told me. Of course, I shared this story with my wife, my sister, and a few friends, but there aren't many people left I can tell something like this to. I guess that's why I wanted to write this post. I just wanted someone else to know about what my parents did. I miss them so much. This story left such a warm mark on my heart. It felt so good to learn that they meant so much not just to me, that they helped people simply because they believed it was the right thing to do. They didn't tell everyone about it, didn't expect gratitude, didn't try to build a reputation as good people. They just did what they felt needed to be done. And I think acts like that deserve to be remembered. So if you've read this far, thank you. I've decided to give up my parental rights to my 14-year-old daughter. I'm 29, my daughter is 14, and I've made the decision to terminate my parental rights. The last 14 years of my life have been one endless battle against her narcissist father and his family. From the moment my daughter was born, they did everything they could to destroy our relationship and turn her against me. In the end, they succeeded. From early childhood, her father taught her to hate me. Whenever I told my daughter, "I love you," he would make her answer, "Screw you." Worse, he encouraged her to physically hurt me, threatened to drive his truck into my house, and sent people to follow me. Every single year for 14 years, he reported me to Child Protective Services and constantly dragged me through the courts. Over the years, I've spent thousands of dollars on lawyers and kept documentation of every single case. Every time, I managed to prove the accusations were false. But I can't do it anymore. I'm burned out. I have no strength left to fight. And honestly, no desire either. My daughter has come to hate me too. She's repeatedly made things up about me, and some of those accusations were serious enough to land me with criminal charges. Every year, the situation gets worse, and I'm increasingly afraid that one day, another lie will lead to something irreversible. Once, my daughter told her teacher that I'd left her home alone and gone off on vacation. The teacher called me to check. I was at home at that very moment. I even offered to come to the school immediately, or told them they could send a police officer to my house to confirm I was actually there. I've been married to another man for 10 years now. Together, we're raising 2 more kids. My husband and children have also spent years being subjected to endless CPS investigations and constant attacks from my daughter's family. At one point, I had to install cameras inside my own home just to be able to protect myself and my other kids from false accusations. We're all exhausted. We just want to live in peace. All I ever wanted was to be a good mother to my daughter. I wanted to give her everything she needed and more. I tried my hardest to be the mom she deserved, but all I got in return was more cruelty and more blows. When she was born, I was only 15. I had no support whatsoever. I managed entirely on my own. Over the years, I've built a good life, a safe life, but they keep trying to take it away from me. Sometimes it feels like they won't stop until they've completely destroyed everything I've built. What matters to them is keeping control over me. But that ends now. A lot more has happened over these 14 years, but my story has already run too long. So, for my own safety, for the safety of my husband and my 2 other children, and because my daughter herself wants this, I've decided to give up my parental rights. It hurts. It's the hardest decision of my life, but I have no strength left to keep fighting this war. And what's the point of clinging to a relationship that, in reality, stopped existing a long time ago? A tenant took his own life after being told his lease would not be renewed. I work for a property management company. One of the properties we manage belongs to an owner who bought it back in the early 2000s. The building came with a tenant who had been renting an apartment there since 2002. That means this man had lived in the building for about 24 years. In all that time, the owner never once raised his rent. The man paid just $475 a month, even though in our city it's hard to rent even a studio for less than $2,000 these days. He was 73 years old. He used to work as a building contractor, but had long since retired. He lived alone. Sometimes he had trouble paying rent. It happened more than once, but we always tried to work something out and gave him the chance to pay off what he owed over time. This time, though, things were different. Neighbors had started filing regular complaints because he smoked right inside his apartment and the smoke was bothering other residents. On top of that, he'd stopped paying rent again and had built up a significant debt. The owner decided to end the tenancy and told him he either had to pay off the debt by a set date or vacate the unit. As the deadline approached, we reached out to him several times to remind him about the situation, but suddenly he stopped responding. It was strange because he had always kept in touch before. The day came when he was supposed to move out. We later learned that before his death, he had plugged all the drains in the apartment, turned on every faucet, and jammed broken matchsticks into the door locks so no one could get inside. Then he took out a gun and did the irreversible. By the time neighbors noticed the leak and reported it, it was already too late. There was about half a meter of standing water in the apartment. A week has passed since then. I keep trying to find any mention of his death or an obituary, but nothing has appeared anywhere. I don't even know if he had any relatives or loved ones who could take care of it. By all appearances, he was a lonely, elderly man who simply didn't know where to go next. Edit. A lot of people misunderstood the situation, so let me clarify. For over 20 years, he lived on a month-to-month lease. During all that time, the owner could have raised the rent or ended the tenancy at any moment, but never did. The decision was made only after numerous complaints from other tenants about the smoking, and because roughly 6 months of unpaid rent had piled up. There was no court-ordered eviction. Nobody forced him out through bailiffs or the courts. The owner simply declined to renew the lease. This whole story shook me badly. To those writing that I have blood on my hands, or that in my place they'd be consumed by guilt, I can only say one thing. I honestly don't understand what you think I should have done. We tried to help. We provided information about available support programs and tried to find options. But what more could I have done? Take him in to live with me? Seriously, what real options did I have in this situation? My brother tried to pull off a sneaky scheme behind his wife's back, but it blew up in his face. Now I'm watching him scramble to dig himself out, and I can't stop laughing. My brother, let's call him Dick, and his wife Anna are in a serious marriage crisis right now, and it's 99% his fault. Anna stays home with the kids, takes college classes online, and runs a small business on the side, network marketing. Whatever you think of those companies, lately it's helped her make new friends, and for the first time in ages, she seems genuinely happier. Before the kids came along, she and my brother had a good relationship. But according to Anna, once she became a mom, everything slowly started going downhill, and now their marriage is hanging by a thread. She takes care of the kids practically around the clock, while Dick thinks he deserves a medal if he watches them for half an hour while she cooks dinner. And it's not that he can't handle parenting duties. He's perfectly capable. The guy just prefers to dump everything on her whenever he gets the chance. This week, the company Anna works with is holding a big conference. We live in the same city where the conference is taking place, but she decided to treat herself to a little getaway. She booked a hotel room near the venue and planned to spend a few days there with her friends. This had been planned for months. She told Dick well in advance that she really needed this break and that the conference would be a great networking opportunity, so she asked him to take a few days off work. Back at Christmas, she double-checked whether the time off was all set. He brushed it off. Yeah, it's fine. That's when I told her, watch, he's going to ruin it. She replied, he'd better not. Recently, she called me in tears. Turns out, Dick had texted her that something urgent had suddenly come up at work and the time off was canceled. On Tuesday, he'd have to stay late, and on Wednesday, he had to fly out on a business trip. Of course, he was terribly sorry and promised to make it up to her. She was so upset she could barely speak. I told her to calm down, finish packing, and pick up the kids from school. I promised I'd watch them until Dick got home. She didn't want me getting involved, but I said, to hell with Dick. We've never been close, and I couldn't care less what he thinks. I stayed with the kids until 10 p.m. when Dick finally showed up. On my way out, I informed him that he was acting like a complete jerk and left. After that, he started bombarding me with calls, and I just switched on Do Not Disturb. The next day, I talked to Anna and found out he'd been blowing up her phone too. Eventually, she laid it out plainly. Either they go to a marriage counselor, or they start looking for divorce lawyers. His choice. And she warned him to stop calling her for no reason, only if something happened with the kids, or if she called to talk to them herself. After that, he got noticeably quiet. Later, he showed up at my house. I talked to him through the doorbell camera. And this man, in all seriousness, asked me what he was supposed to do with the kids now. I asked whether he had ever actually submitted that time off request. I never got an answer. Instead, he started feeding me the same story about his oh-so-important business trip. Then he complained that Anna hadn't left him the babysitter's contact info and asked if I could take the kids. I told him to get off my property along with all his excuses. If he'd been even slightly involved in raising his own children, he'd have had the babysitter's numbers saved long ago. Before leaving, Anna had prepped meals for the kids, laid out clothes for the entire week, and written up a detailed schedule. Honestly, I can't imagine what else he could possibly need. Our parents and Anna's parents are currently just ignoring his calls. He's had to manage on his own all week, and his supposedly crucial business trip ended up getting canceled. Anna said that when she gets back, she's definitely going to find out what that whole trip story was really about. As for me, I hope she's having a fantastic time with her friends and finally getting some rest. And I equally hope Dick doesn't get a single minute of peace this week. Nobody believes his excuses anymore, and nobody is going to bail him out of the mess he got himself into. And the more I think about it, the funnier it gets. Good luck, bro. Made it to the end? I'm already grateful. And if you'd be so kind as to like and subscribe, I'd be almost happy. Bye.